You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You know, every once in a while I gird my loins and descend into the abyss, the pit, the hellhole that our country is rapidly becoming. I glance around briefly, understanding that the man who plays the president on TV is actually sitting in the White House, and he's sitting on a platform of bitter revenge against his political enemies. He started out this term with loyalty tests and banishing staff of any consequence, and banning words, not just books, words, and purging civil servants and deploying an FBI director who promises to punish anybody who emits any criticisms of Trump. His cabinet is a nightmare. He then signed orders effectively making it impossible for various law firms to represent clients who do business with the government. Department of Homeland Security began using plainclothes officers to kidnap foreign students, legal residents of the United States, off of streets and campuses, while the White House threatened major cuts in funding to universities where protests had taken place. Yeah, Harvard is not playing. Also, his government is investigating scores of public and private universities and is working on cutting out references to women who have achieved history, Black and Native American combat veterans from public monuments, and so forth. In the meantime, Elon Musk, whose apparent ketamine fondness has him threatening journalists at 60 Minutes with prison sentences because they questioned his taking his little chainsaw to yet another federal agency. Gee, it's hard to keep up, you know? There's so many names. So-called deep staters to be prosecuted, press outlets to be sentenced to exile, disabled nonprofit staffers who dared criticize Musk himself, and members of Congress who managed to organize a workshop or two to inform immigrant constituents of their rights under the Constitution. They were threatened, the members of Congress, with federal prosecution. But Musk's Tesla has suffered a nearly 30% drop in share price since January, while New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker gave birth to historic 24 hours in a speech defying Trump's agenda, the longest ever speech in the Senate. Take that, Strom Thurmond. And now, J.D. Lance, the stock market fancy man from Appalachia, together with Elon in his new pro-love, has called for lots and lots of women to have lots and lots of babies. Aren't you just certain we're going to do that? You see, Western civilization is endangered. Not enough white people. I mean, it isn't as though the planet itself was groaning under the weight of trying to feed and carry so many billions of people. No. There aren't enough of us. There's far too little cutting down of forests and polluting of streams and letting tsunamis eat shorelines, and far too little fires, and oh no, we need more pregnant women. Meg Atwood thought she was being far out, writing a fictional dystopia. I almost said dyspepsia, but that would be true too. Anyway, it was a dystopia, but it really was a mild-mannered little tale, and it didn't go far enough. So I, for one, can't wait to see what happens next. In the meanwhile, our guest today, Meg Stone, is the executive director of Impact Boston, an abuse prevention and empowerment self-defense organization. Her writing has been published in the Huffington Post, Newsweek, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Dome, and Ms. She's received numerous awards for her work over the past 30 years and lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with her partner, and a shockingly large collection of musical theater cast albums. And her book, this amazing book, is called The Cost of Fear: Why Most Safety Advice is Sexist and How We Can Stop Gender-Based Violence. The Cost of Fear. I can't wait for that either, except I've already read it, and it is something else. So we'll return in just a minute and talk with Meg Stone after this brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Meg Stone. Well, welcome to Women's Media Center Live. Good to have you here.
Oh gosh, it's such an honor to be here with you. I've been reading your work since the most formative days of myself, considering myself a feminist, and getting to actually talk to you is kind of a dream, an honor, all the things. So thank you.
Oh, wow. And gee whiz, wow. Gee whiz, wow.
And
Well,
before we started recording, I said the fangirl portion was over, but I guess I was not accurate. So thank
the
you.
fangirl portion goes both ways, because this book, The Cost of Fear: Why Most Safety Advice is Sexist and How We Can Stop Gender-Based Violence. This book is a jewel. I mean, this is really, I'm a fangirl as well now.
Thank you so much.
This in one place is not only advice on how to survive in a patriarchy, but it's also well written. It's witty in its parts. It's very touching in others. The stories of individual women are very moving, and it's compassionate, and it's so full of information. I mean, this goes into why why things die at the police station, why things die in court, why things, why things don't move faster, why. So we go behind the scenes as well as in front of the scene. This is really very, very useful.
Thank
And
you.
it also is at its heart about resistance. It
Mhm.
is not about, making nice or, compromising, fiddling around, digging your toe into the dirt and so looking shyly and trying to not offend anybody. This is about power.
Mhm.
And power to, not power over, power to. And I thank you for it. It's really important.
Thank you.
And I don't know how you manage to do it and everything else that you do. But people don't realize, um, when Anita did, when I was editing Ms. and when Anita Hill did a piece for our very first issue, her first speaking out about it.
Mm.
But we were talking about this, and she's so wonderful, and and we were both saying, it was barely 5 years since the Supreme Court, had declared sexual harassment illegal because of the Civil Rights Act of
Mhm.
1964, I guess. Um, and but people are just so astonished that it was that this continued so late. And I said, of course, well, it still continues.
Right, right.
I mean, what do you mean continued? It's
Exactly.
there's no past tense to it.
Right.
This goes on. Marital rape, just because we got it declared illegal, that helped. But changing laws, which has been so paramount for the women's movement, is vital, absolutely vital. But it can't really change until in a very concrete way, attitudinal change happens. And
Right.
yours is about attitudinal change and individual women standing up and saying, no, 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 no
Right.
more of this.
Yeah, and one of my purposes in writing this book was just to look at the realities of sexual assault, intimate partner violence, other types of gender-based violence, and the secrecy and the privacy is a defining characteristic of this violence.
Absolutely.
And several men in authority, in leadership, have made public statements supporting the Me Too movement or decrying sexual assault. And then it has come out in the news that they have been sexually assaulting their partners, their friends, their classmates, in the case of high school students.
Right.
And so what I was trying to get at is that there are individual resistance skills that women and LGBTQ plus people of all genders can learn and
Mm-hmm.
can enact that support and amplify all of the social justice struggles that we are working toward.
Right.
There is no one magical strategy that's going to stop rape or that's going to stop sexism. I none of your listeners believe that it's that simplistic.
No, of
It
course not.
really, when it comes to individual skills and skills that can live inside the bodies of folks who are targeted for gender-based violence, it is so important to differentiate between the types of baseless safety advice that, every teenage girl for the last 20 plus years who has showed up in one of my classes has heard.
Right.
Things like, don't wear a ponytail, an attacker can grab it. The elaborate schemes that we're supposed to enact in order to avoid parking near a white van, as if, anyone who lives in a city. I have to say, anyone who lives in a city that is congested, like, you take any parking spot you can find.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, but
there's a
those
lot of
white vans are
oh,
very,
yeah.
oh, yeah. And it's a parking lot, and it's, don't go shopping alone, and it's don't
Right,
walk down an darkly lit street. And you're put in a position of, it's not just a position, it's a reality of constant fear. And
right.
there's a cost to that, as your title points out.
Yes, and that was something that I really wanted to illustrate, the cost of fear both to the emotional well-being of everyday people,
Mm,
as well as I interviewed several women who work in male-dominated fields, some of whom are survivors of sexual assault, who face professional costs because they
yeah,
don't keep up with the men who are drinking at the social event, or they leave the lab earlier because they're afraid of being alone in the lab in the dark.
right.
And then the even more painful impact of activists. One of the women that I interviewed lives in a rural part of Pennsylvania that is a stronghold of the Proud Boys and other extremist groups. And
Oh,
she was being threatened and intimidated when she showed up at the school board to, oppose book bans or
hmm
advocate for trans kids.
mm,
And she had to learn some resistance skills so that she could have her voice heard. And what really struck me as I was interviewing some of the activists that were facing that kind of threat, harassment, intimidation, this woman was called a pedophile in front of her daughter, and then she had to explain to her daughter what a pedophile was.
mhm,
And what really stuck with me is, like, if somebody had good ideas and they were confident that their ideas could persuade people, they would not need to threaten, harass, and intimidate members of their opposition.
right.
So the cost of fear really can diminish our activism.
Oh, it
So
shrinks
what
it.
the other theme that I wanted to bring up in writing the book was the way in which a lot of the very sincerely intended safety advice that we get from patriarchal institutions and individuals can itself become a form of coercive control. So yes. So if you're told, like, don't go shopping alone, don't, buy more groceries than fit in one bag, don't park in this parking lot, a lot of, and some of the safety advice is even telling us not to do things that are healthy for us, like don't take the stairs. Attackers hide out in stairwells.
Yeah.
For my second book, I dug into the cardiology research about how healthy it is to take the stairs. So so there's this real dynamic of, like, commanding instead of persuading that
Yeah.
comes out of this baseless safety advice, and I
And
think
I think it's semi-conscious too, because
yeah, yeah,
I think it's intended. Well, it's for your own good, and I'm just trying to help, but
right,
it isn't trying to help. It's keeping you in place. It's keeping
right,
you from moving in your own powers and toward your own powers.
right.
So it's not. It's very scary, uh, because it's nuanced and it's careful and it's thought through. It's in some ways as scary as the offense itself. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't, some of there's been so much quality research, even in the before times, if such a thing exists.
mm,
It was near impossible to get the US federal government to fund this research.
yeah.
But despite that barrier, and thanks to the Canadian researchers who have persuaded their federal government to fund it, we know that self-defense programs for women that are explicitly feminist, that
Hmm.
focus on coercive control from familiar people,
Right.
that draw a clear line between systemic sexism and that date you went on last Friday night,
Hmm.
are the ones that reduce sexual assault by 50% or more.
Yeah. It's
And
just.
also, researchers who look at sex education find that women who received sex education that included refusal skills, not abstinence only, but actual sex education
Right.
before they got to college, experienced 50% less sexual violence when they were in college.
Mm.
So these resistance strategies that
Work.
live inside of those of us who are targeted for gender-based violence can work in the absence of the broad societal systemic change that we are all working toward, and that is not going to happen in time for your daughter to go to college next year.
No, it's not. That's right.
So what we can do is we can give people practical skills that contribute to culture change, social change,
Hmm.
all of the other change efforts that we need to engage in to, liberate folks that are harmed by sexism and racism and ableism and transphobia and all
Right.
the
Right.
things.
Well, I tell you, I mean, this book reminded me of Callisto. Do you know their work?
Not that well. I've heard of it, but I don't know it well.
Yeah. Well, Callisto is. It's a nonprofit, but it's also they started as a at a humble fee, but they decided no, even that was too much for universities.
Mm,
It's a database. It is it's the Callisto Vault, and students who are being sexually harassed or assaulted can contact that, and lodge in complete safety
mm,
the name of the attacker and the circumstances and so forth. And
mhm,
then, and that is kept in the vault. I mean, that is really secretive. Um, and this is for people who can't go outside, or
Right.
are afraid to go outside to the police, or even campus authorities.
Mhm.
And then other women can look at the database without names attached to it at all and see similar patterns.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, and in fact, if they choose to take that route, they can follow it further, and they can find out the name of the person who was accused. So that's very valuable. That's just huge. And Callisto is now thinking of expanding
Yeah.
itself into being a Callisto, which is the name of a Greek goddess who fought back.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so Callisto is now thinking of having a Callisto in the workplace, and a Callisto in, all of these other places, which would be just dynamite.
Yeah, yeah. One of the interviews, actually probably 3 of the interviews that I did, were, centered around a cluster of women in the science, technology,
Oh, yes,
engineering, and math space that had seen the harm that came to junior women or women who hadn't yet finished their PhDs
right.
if they tried to use institutional recourse to try and report, tenured, powerful men who were bringing, millions of dollars into the university.
Then it happens all over again on a
Yeah,
bigger
yeah.
scale.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how my book became dated, as soon as it came out in some ways. It's just all a worse version of the same problems, but this grassroots group of women saw that it was not safe personally or professionally to depend on the official channels.
Right.
So they started mentoring women who were being targeted for abuse and harassment and helping them find a way to a safer work situation.
Yes.
So it's when we can be nuanced enough to simultaneously be unrelenting in our fights to change the system and know that our immediate safety needs something different than to depend on the systems that we are fighting to change.
Exactly. And now they're international even, aren't they?
Yeah.
This is fantastic. So that they're seizing power in their own hands, and they're doing good stuff with it, and saving each other and saving themselves. And things like this are they're stepping stones toward freedom. Um, because the uh, capitulation that we go through, twisting ourselves into pretzels to not
Mhm.
offend, the not offending. I can't I can't even number the times growing up that I didn't fight back,
Mhm.
because I was afraid of offending the man.
Yeah, and that is so, like, one of the concepts that I so deeply that was so important to me as I was writing was to name it safety through resistance.
Hmm.
And the research actually bears out that forceful resistance is more effective at stopping sexual violence than everything that, most of us have been told since we were kids about being
Right.
nice and
Compliance does
yeah,
not work.
yes.
No.
And at the same time, it is so important to honor any reaction that any person has had to a situation where somebody has tried to harm them.
Yes.
I hope that no one blames themselves for capitulation or any type of response that anybody has made in a system and in a culture where the safety information we get is so notoriously inaccurate
Hmm.
and unhelpful.
No, you're not guilty of that, and
Yeah,
you say it very, very clearly, somewhere in there. I think you say, someone wanting to do you violence is not your fault.
right.
It's just it's very simple. It's not your fault. But what women have been so conditioned to, I don't want to say collaborating, because that's not accurate, but complying, and fearing worse results if they don't comply.
Right.
That it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's disastrous.
I can't,
Absolutely.
one of the things that I have been noticing, I've been teaching feminist self-defense for more than 20 years, and there's such a level of sophistication in, the girls I taught 2 weeks ago compared to when I first started
Mm,
about, like really good questions about consent, about sex, about intimacy,
wow.
things like, what if you said yes and then it stopped feeling right and you change your mind in the middle of a hookup? And I was like, well, just because you want to eat 2 cookies doesn't mean you want to eat 9 cookies. So, the same principle, and 2 cookies are delicious and pleasurable, and like 9 cookies make you feel like throwing up.
Yeah.
But even in the level, like all of the work that we've all done for 20 years is in many ways showing up in the students that we're reaching. And at the same time, a lot of the mythologies that are perpetrated by patriarchal approaches to personal safety
Mhm.
have not changed.
Yes.
It,
Yes,
like,
exactly.
I was asked, shouldn't you just go along with what he says to avoid making him mad? Like, I heard that fighting back will just make the attacker angry, and so you should just be nice.
Right.
And, the more I thought about that statement, the more heartbroken I became that w people
Still
people
believe
believe,
it.
like, but also, like, that the attacker's anger is somehow my responsibility,
Uh-huh.
and I can control that,
Yeah.
and that sort of pervasive pressure to take care of the feelings of
Yeah.
a person who is trying to harm you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
That's
yeah, it is.
crazy. That's a definition of insanity. I mean, that's really um
But I just want to acknowledge, like, it's not only like, it would be one thing if, like, a couple of, a handful of individual men, stood up websites and told women not to wear ponytails.
yeah.
But a lot of both the people I interviewed and the people who curtly refused to be interviewed, like, these are law enforcement agencies. These are
Mhm.
county sheriffs. These are city or town departments.
Yep.
So our taxpayer dollars are being spent on baseless safety advice, and
Well, it's not just baseless. It's not in our self-interest. It's
right,
negative.
it's power and control.
That's
And,
right.
like, if the county health department ever, put something on their website saying, "Don't wear vegetable or don't eat vegetables outside because you won't absorb the vitamins," like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't fly because it's so divorced from reality. And yet when it comes to safety, there's a way that many police agencies don't have to adhere to the same standards of factual information.
That's right. That's absolutely right. The one area where they do, they're being very, very careful is if you notice them being interviewed, sort of ex-FBI heads and
Mm.
ex-police commissioners and so on, is on terrorism. They are really watching their words very, very carefully, and they're treading lightly. Um, so they can do it when they want to do it, but then they will blunder into something that is sexist and not even notice. Not even notice. And
And
it's
a lot of the men that I interviewed, like, I was very moved by their sincerity. Uh,
mhm.
so I don't think everybody has, self-consciously bad intent.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
That's what makes it in a strange way even
right.
worse because
Yeah.
they can be likable and they are likable and they don't mean to go out of their way to be insulting and threatening, but that winds up that way and they don't understand
Mm.
how and why it winds up that way. So it gets to be a real coil. But
Yeah, and it's a patriarchal relationship dynamic. Like,
that's right.
it and I've participated in a lot of these types of courses or lectures. So I'm like the person you don't want in your audience if you're about to give baseless patriarchal advice. But what always strikes me is that there is a generosity with everything except the space to think for yourself and question. And there's
Ah,
a way that the word smart is used.
yeah.
Um, there's a lot of definitions of the word smart, but usually it refers
Uh-huh.
to thinking, reasoning, questioning, analyzing. But when patriarchal safety advice says smart, it means following and complying. So
Oh my God, that's so
it
good. That's
it
very
was
good.
yeah, so the way to be smart is to do what men say
That's right.
and to treat,
Oh no, she didn't take any risks. She was smart.
to
Uh-huh.
smart, yes, to like
Uh-huh.
not wear your favorite high heels or
Right.
to, have your turn your husband into your chaperone so that you don't have to go shopping alone after dark. And like,
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but I live in the Northeast. So, a few months of the year, 5 p.m. is after dark. So,
Yep. 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 Yep.
like,
Yep.
so just don't hold a job, or get an escort to bring you home.
Yeah.
And I think what I really wanted to tease out and what was so important for me to look at is the types of like explicit laws and policies that would say like women are not allowed out in public, would not fly in the United States, at least now. Let's hope that stays real.
I was going
But,
to say, yeah.
for now. But what this sort of compliance based, coercive control based safety advice does is for a lot of us, it scares us into diminishing ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
It confines it,
yes.
it's a tightening circle. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And until you're outside it, in fact, you're not,
Yeah,
you're,
and it's impossible, and it sets us up for failure because, like, you
hmm
know, if you have long hair, regardless of your gender, the people in my life who have the longest hair are indigenous men. So
right, right.
the ponytail advice is targeted in a very particular way.
Yeah.
Like there's no way you can never wear a ponytail, never park near a van,
No, of course
really
not. No, no, no,
right.
no. These things are crazy.
Right.
Um,
And it's also like it miscalibrates our fear,
yeah,
which
because if you're fearing the wrong things,
right. And it focuses our fear on people who are already stigmatized. So if somebody is intoxicated and sitting on a sidewalk and maybe hasn't showered in a few days, if that person is sitting on a sidewalk, they are no threat to me.
right.
But if my colleague who is well dressed and has like the cool cologne keeps touching
Ah,
me when I don't want him to,
right.
and when I say I don't need help, he helps me anyway, and in the course of helping me carry something, he touches me, then my radar might not go up if I'm too busy being scared of the intoxicated person outside of my office. So
Precisely. Yes,
so
precisely.
this
You have a
helps
very
us.
good chapter on resisting racism,
Yes.
um,
Thank you.
and which I know paralyzes a lot of white women or women who are non-black in general. And I remember it goes back to the civil rights movement, in fact, where until the white and black women who were doing voter registration in the South, until we set up a meeting and got through to each other about the behavior of the men, white as well as black. Um, the men were having just a heyday of
Mm.
enjoying the guilt of the white women because there was a lot of give me a little of my civil rights tonight, honey. And the white women were getting screwed literally and figuratively, and the black women were getting screwed because they were being made to feel unwanted, uncared for, unlovable, disliked. And the whole thing was a mess, a toxic mess. And so it wasn't until the women banded together across what were this is a long time ago, pretty severe bridges, um, um, that we made any progress. And the men were very discomfited by that,
And just to acknowledge, like, this is a country, since the days of slavery, um, sexual violence against white women was falsely used to weaponize racism against Black people and Black
Precisely.
men. So I think it is a really painful and overtly racist history that we are connected in. So I just want to name that and acknowledge that, as well as the reality that most of the people who get criminalized for defending themselves from the 1970s to
Mm-hmm.
last week are either Black women, women of color, or LGBTQ plus people of color.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So there's a way in which there's an amazing book written by Miriam Kaba called No Selves to Defend.
Mm-hmm.
It's available online. That I can send you I can send you the link if you need it. You can probably find it easier than me. But in which it was published right after Marissa Alexander was criminalized for shooting a gun into a wall,
Yeah.
injuring no one. And this is a domestic violence survivor who was being threatened by an abusive ex. And it was Florida in the height of the stand your ground laws.
God.
So there's an amazing group of activists who are part of Survived and Punished, and they have done incredible work around the ways in which self-defense law is biased toward men protecting themselves from strangers, and sometimes not even themselves, but their property.
Mhm.
Um,
Sure.
which is, all of the rest of the people
Yep.
historically.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. 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 Yep.
so it is really important, especially for myself as a white woman with some, with lots of other privileges, to, really have like a critical yet supportive stance toward my intuition.
Well, you do it, and you do it beautifully. You
Thank you.
really, it's a very important
Because
chapter.
it is so important to both not dismiss my reality and to not let racism and stigma shape who I fear and who I trust.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's really, when you boil it down, you have a talent for making things very simple. And that's a genius talent. So hang on to it,
Thank
because
you.
for a writer, it's very important.
Thank you.
And this book is just dynamite. And it also has very practical advice. Why you can wear a ponytail,
Right.
and you know what it did? It made me want to drop everything. And I'm not about to do this because I'm 84 now. But it made me want to drop everything and rush up to Boston and say, "Oh, I want to take a class with you."
You know what? If you ever do, the fact that you're 84 is not a barrier at all.
I know that. I know
Feminist self-defense, there's also a Black liberation tradition of self-defense.
there
It
is.
it is not acceptable to have self-defense techniques that only work for young, non-disabled athletic.
Hell no, 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 no.
Like, that's not my social justice vision. I am a last kid picked in gym class for every sport my entire childhood.
Mm, well,
I
I can tell you also it doesn't stop because about 20, 20 or almost 30 years after I took my taekwondo classes, and I got to green belt. Um, so I was not a complete slunch. And so, I was walking along. I would joke that I couldn't do if you pushed me, I would keel over. I'd had a kid. I thought, oh, this is ridiculous, and I couldn't do anything. And I was walking along, um, around in Union Square, and I passed a guy who began following me, and I thought, and so I do what you did. Noted the exits, noted what I was doing, noted where the nearest light was, where the nearest people were. But I kept walking, and didn't increase my pace or anything. And he came up and behind me, and he asked for a light for a cigarette. And I said I didn't have a match. Sorry, and I kept walking. I didn't say sorry. I said I don't have a match. And then he laid a hand on my arm, and honest to God, Meg, I fucking floored him.
Mm.
I took off, and um, I kicked him in the groin. I pushed him. He keeled over, doubled over. I kicked him again, and I ran because there was blood coming out of his head. And I just ran like I don't know whatever happened to him. I hope he was all right. I don't know. I don't know what I hope, but he was not in great shape when I ran out of the park. And uh, and I thought to myself, isn't that amazing? There are still reflexes that one learns um, in in class that don't leave one.
Yeah. I interviewed a woman who had an experience 15 years after she had taken the class, in which she was working in a human service agency, working with teens that had a lot of struggles, a lot of problems. And one of her clients, who was like a larger teen boy, tried to put her in a headlock. And
Hmm.
she used a self defense skill in a way that injured neither of them and
Right.
prevented a situation where this teenager who was struggling then had to be criminalized.
Uh,
So I think those sort of individual moments of resistance add up to social change.
yep, I do too.
There's something that came out of your story. I love, I love that the technique stuck with you, but I wanna uplift another aspect of your experience with that guy. One of the there's so much bad information out there that most of the people that we teach come into our classes with some very elaborate and off-base information about what's a red flag or what's a sign of danger.
Hmm.
The actual red flags are always just much more simple than, the guy in the van who has both a black hoodie and a black hat or whatever,
And the van is white, of course.
Yes, the van is always white and the windows are always tinted.
Yep,
So
right. You
I'm
got
sure there's like a car dealer out there that's like
it.
for defamation. But anyway, so this guy asked you for a light and you said you didn't have a light.
Uh-huh.
And he treated your no like it didn't matter.
That's right.
And that is the red flag.
Yeah, sure.
So something as simple as "I'm sorry I can't help you," or "I can't help you." The
Yeah.
politics of women saying "I'm sorry" are,
Well,
a
this is the
bit.
power of no, you
Yes.
know. Just
Or like, "I can't help you. Please leave me alone. Leave me alone."
right,
Any phrase like that,
right.
if you and this is relevant to people we don't know, people we know a little, and people we're very close to. If someone treats the fact that you said no or the fact that you asserted your boundary like it doesn't matter,
Mhm.
that is the red flag.
Yep. I could have
So,
I could have
y-
attacked him then and not waited. I ca I
or just
actually
yeah,
I
yeah.
was a slouch. I waited till he put a hand on me.
Again, like, please do not second guess yourself, but also, you know, you probably protected yourself from, external scrutiny by, like if I punched everybody that talk to me when I didn't want to talk to them, I would probably have some pretty big legal troubles. So, so
Oh,
please tell your listeners, go to the gym and hit the punching bag when you feel angry and use physical resistance for physical threat.
oh, Meg, you are just fabulous.
Aw,
You're wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The
thank you
book is
and thank you so much for taking the time to interview me. I listened to the podcast. I can't believe I still can't believe that like I'm actually on it.
Oh, you are
So
so on it. You betcha.
thank
And
you
we'll be
so
on it,
much.
and we'll be on it in perpetuity. The book is called The Cost of Fear, and it's a high cost. Why most safety advice is sexist and how we can stop gender-based violence by Meg Stone. The Cost of Fear. And it's on Amazon, despite that terrible man. And but
Everywhere.
yeah, I know.
Beacon Press is the publisher. They
Uh,
publish a lot of
yeah,
social justice
yeah.
books.
Beacon Press is a good press.
They've
And
been the best.
they
I
are.
could
They're
not have asked
a
for a
fine
better.
press. Yeah. And the book is just dynamite. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And you are wonderful. So
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you so much, Meg, for being on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin Morgan. I'm just so glad to be here.
We have to take a brief pause here, but I'll return in just a moment with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
What an exquisite swirl of blue and white that little marble of a planet once was. Those are fighting words. Recently, there were stories in the press about dire wolves. Yes, aptly named, perhaps. Dire, D-I-R-E, wolves. They had been returned after more than 12,000 years from extinction. Scientists at the Dallas, Texas-based biotech company, Colossal Biosciences, bred genetically modified puppies from ancient bone and tooth fossils of dire wolves, using CRISPR, a DNA editing tool, to insert DNA from dire wolves into the cells of gray wolves, and then implanted the living wolf embryos into domestic dogs. By the way, no one asked the domestic dogs, poor bitches, whether they were willing to carry, bear, and raise dire wolves. But the scientists at Colossal Biosciences were giddy about their triumph, which was not, after all, a de-extinction, as they were claiming, but rather a demonstration of how far we've come in the toolkit of synthetic biology, a field that involves redesigning systems found in nature. And it's a reminder of how far we still are from truly reversing extinction. The Dire Wolf Project is a similar exercise in technological potential, not biological resurrection. So what did exactly happen in that lab? Scientists at Colossal extracted ancient DNA from fossilized dire wolf remains, including a 13,000-year-old tooth and a 72,000-year-old ear bone. From these samples, they sequenced the genome, the full complement of DNA cells, compared it with that of the modern gray wolf, and identified approximately 20 genetic differences that were key to the extinct animal's appearance. These differences represent tiny tweaks in the genetic code, known as single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, SNPs. They named the pups Romulus and Remus, a note to the legendary founders of Rome, raised by a wolf, while Khaleesi, the female, the third pup, evokes the name of dire wolves from the fictional series Game of Thrones. Now, sure, the puppies are adorable, if a bit large. The scientists celebrated how techniques honed in this project could find applications in conservation, especially for endangered species suffering from inbreeding and genetic bottlenecks. They told each other again and again how ready they all were for their Nobel Prizes. But wait. This transformation, like others before it, like the mouse, which bore characteristics of the woolly mammoth, presents problems and presents heavy responsibilities. These are imitation dire wolves, not de-extincted ones. What role will these pseudo-dire wolves play in the wild? Will they behave like the long-extinct predators that they mimic? Or would they simply resemble them in form but not function? I mean, ecosystems are delicately balanced networks of interaction. Adding a creature that's similar but not identical to a former apex predator could have highly unpredictable consequences. Of course, this all reminds us of Jurassic Park, the movie about raptors and dinosaurs who were de-extincted and then ran wild and menaced human beings. There's also a kind of horror movie trope which goes further afield and has Elon Musk-type oligarchs, businessmen de-extincting Cro-Magnon humanoids, possessing little intelligence but enormous strength, then assembling and training them as workers when and if robotic labor and its maintenance becomes too costly. Indeed, the horror story tropes stretch infinitely into the future. It would seem that modern so-called civilization can find innumerable things to fiddle with and change, but not man himself. Sick man. This is Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley's tale of Frankenstein's creature, writ in Silicon Valley and writ large. But I would argue, along with Mary, that instead of chasing lost species, we could focus on protecting what biodiversity we still have, what remains. Resources poured into de-extinction could be better spent preserving habitats, restoring degraded ecosystems, preventing modern extinctions. Look, I would plead, this isn't about bringing back the dead and heroically conquering death itself. No, this is about changing our attitudes and behavior, changing ourselves to preserve and cherish the living. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.